All right. Let's give it a few minutes to see if anybody hops on. See anybody hops on and hang out for a few minutes here. Okay. Let's see what we got. Sometimes it takes a few minutes. Anybody that hops on, make sure to say hi in the comments so I know you're here. And let me know if you can hear me. It's a little breezy out over here, so let me know if you can hear me. What's up? Who do we have on here? Who do we have? Somebody hopped on. Dimitri, what's up, man? What's up, dude? I'm going to get to it. How long I should do nothing after a marathon? I'm going to get to it shortly. I just wanted to see if anybody else hops on. I'm only going to give another minute or two, and then I'll start. Yes, I can hear you. Perfect. Good. Perfect. What do you normally do? I mean, like 2 weeks of total rest. You've run a marathon before, right, Dimitri? And what have you done after the marathon prior? Like, how did you recover? I'm curious to know what you've done before. 2 weeks is something, I know folks who do 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is fine. Everybody's rest requirements a little bit different. 3 weeks, you ran one 3 weeks ago. Have you done anything in 3 weeks leading up now? Have you started running yet, or have you taken 3 weeks off? 354. So you've been off for 3 weeks? Okay. All right. Well, then it's definitely, you can definitely, total rest is fine. So, and I'm going to get to it. So basically, recovering from the marathon it varies per person. It depends on how much time you've, not only whether it's your first marathon or if you're an experienced marathon, how long you've taken to train leading up to the marathon, factoring in, running, just walking. Okay. Factoring in a lot of things. Were you training mostly on pavement? Were you training on dirt surfaces, grass, a combination of the two? Training surfaces can help dictate that too, because training on pavement all the time tends to beat up the legs a little bit more, or a lot more than training on other, softer surfaces. So how that is an important part of training as well, and recovery too. So, but generally, what I've done and what I've prescribed people, and again, there's individualized components as well, but I generally prescribe. So the first week is completely off, okay? And then the next week, you can either take the second week off completely, or I generally, if people want to run, or I generally don't have them run in the second week, I'll have them do alternating days of like an off day and then biking or swimming or some kind of cross training. So I don't have them do any kind of subscribed running at all for the first 2 weeks at all. So to make sure that you're fully recovered from a marathon. Marathon is not like a 5K. It takes longer to recover from. So that's generally what I do. The first, because after about 10 days off of no running, that's when you can start to, lose fitness cumulatively. So something to keep in mind. That's why I have them do some moderate activity, just moderate, maybe 20 minutes of activity, that second week, like 20-minute swim, 20-minute bike, or cross training of some sort, alternating with an off day. What I have folks do is do some kind of, obviously, recovery, ice baths, and especially the week after, some stretching to kind of get the blood flowing into the legs to help promote. Okay, so that's an important thing. Any structure running of any kind for the first 2 weeks. Okay, so again, off, and then what I generally do is have them do 3 days of cross training or something like that. So Monday's off, Tuesday cross train, Wednesday off, Thursday cross train, Friday off, Saturday cross train, Sunday off. Okay, so you're alternating, and there's only 3 days of just light exercise, nothing major, but none of it running. And then the next 4 weeks after that, I take a slow approach. It also depends on what your plan is afterward. After you run a marathon, do you plan on running a marathon again in the next season, or do you want to focus on shorter races and things like that to complement the marathon? Somebody else hopped on here. Say hi in the comments so I know who you are. So that's an important part too. But 3 weeks. So you've been doing some running, so some light exercise, Dimitri, which is fine. And generally no running, but you can start running now. You can definitely start running now. But that's generally what I do. So no running the first week. The second week, alternate cross training and off days. And then the next 3 weeks after that, so week 3 after the marathon, I have to do 3 days of running. So let's just say you're doing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Hi, Kim. Running a marathon in York tomorrow. Super excited. All right, Kim. Well, good luck to you tomorrow. I hope you do well. And is this your first marathon? Is it your first marathon? Let me know. Let me know. But welcome. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the video, the live stream. I was just talking to Dimitri here about things to do post marathon. And if you've ever run a marathon if you've ever run a marathon before, you probably have an idea of what to do afterward. But I was kind of going over my recommendations. These are things that I've used for my own athletes that I coach for almost 2 decades now, with a lot of success in terms of recovery from a marathon, getting you ready to do what you want to do the next cycle, the next season. So, what I was saying is the first week after marathon is completely off. The next week is alternating cross training and an off day, just like it's biking or just some kind of cross training exercise or swimming, something low impact every other day, like Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for 3 days. And then the other days are off days, but stretching every day to make sure you're promoting good blood flow, particularly active stretching. So that's a good way of kind of promoting recovery as well. But 2 weeks of no structured running at all. And then week 3, I generally have folks do 3 days of running. So Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, alternating with off days. And it's just very light, very light. 30 minutes of whatnot or whatever it is. Let's just say you're going to take the next 6 weeks or so, or 4 weeks to build up a nice volume. So let's say it's 25% volume the first week. And then the following week, I go from 3 days to 4 days. So let's just say it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Okay, alternating with 3 off days. So now you're 4 days running. The week after that, 5 days. So let's say Monday and Tuesday you run. You take Wednesday off, and then you run Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So you're running 2 days consecutively, then an off day, and then 3 days consecutively, then an off day. Okay, so now you're at 5 days of running. Your 10th marathon, hopefully first. All right, Kim. Good luck. 10th. So you know the deal. You have experience. I'm speaking of my experience as a coach and a former competitive runner as well, as to things I definitely recommend post marathon. I hope you get your sub 3. I really do. I hope your training went well too. So after that, after the 5-day week, then the 4th week is the 6-day week. So you can run consecutively if you want, 6 days straight, or you can run Monday through Wednesday and then take Thursday off and then run Friday through Sunday. So 3 days off day, 3 days. Now you're at 6 days a week, and that's 6 weeks out from a marathon. And again, it's all just basic running again, just to get the body back to running, make sure that it's fully recovered from the marathon, and and it gives you time to decide what you want to do the next training cycle, the next season. I generally, what depends on people, but I generally have folks do some shorter stuff after a marathon, anywhere from 5K leading up to the half marathon, which will act as speed work for the next marathon, which the marathon acting as strength work for those shorter races as well. They complement each other very well. So, but it's important to be able to run races from 5K up to the marathon. The more versatile you are, the better off you're going to be, particularly in the marathon, and especially the more efficient you are, which is why I'm a proponent of speed development all year round. Then the better off you're going to be for a marathon. And as you know, Kim, preserving your energy and being efficient is very important in a marathon. It's not like a 5K. You can't have an off day and come back the next week. You got to be as efficient as possible with your running posture and rhythm and pace and a lot of things. So it's very important. Pete plays. Hey, how are you, Pete plays? Thoughts on solely doing cross training during the first 2 weeks after a marathon, like only swimming? So what I was saying, Pete, if you happen to miss the beginning, I generally do. After a marathon, week 1 for me is nothing. Just 7 straight off days. Nothing. Gotta let the body fully recover. Okay, but stretching every day just to get the blood flow. The following week, I actually alternate off days and cross training or swimming. So what I have folks do the following week, and this is what I do with my athletes, is have them do 3 days the following week of like swimming. So let's say you swim Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then you're off Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, but you're still stretching. I generally don't want any structured runners 2 weeks leading up after a marathon. Got to give the legs a break because it's a much higher impact. And depending on the surfaces that you're training on, if you were doing pavement running all along, then I would be more liberal and more generous with the recovery on the back end. If you were training on softer stuff, which is less taxing on the legs, then on the back end, I would be, being a little bit more, potentially a little bit more aggressive on, building back up the volume. But it's generally first 2 weeks, no running at all, a little bit of cross training week 2, week 3 after the marathon, 3 days of running, week 4, 4 days, week 5, 5 days, and week 6, 6 days of running. But it's all just relaxed running, getting your legs back under you, and and that's generally 6 weeks post marathon. But keeping in mind a lot of those things and focusing on not only nutrition and good sleep, and even starting to incorporate a little bit of strength training to kind of get the muscles back going again, get them engaged. But it takes a while to recover from a marathon, longer than folks, give it credit for, and I wouldn't underestimate it. And again, some people recover quicker, some people take a longer time, but I would be on the conservative side in terms of recovery from the marathon, just to put you in a better position to ramp up your training afterward for whatever you want to run, whether it's short stuff, you want to run a marathon, whatever it is. But being diligent with that. Running every other day the second week, and then just a few easy weeks. That's what I do. First week off, maybe some dog walking, cool. Then running every other day the second week, and then just a few easy weeks. That's fine too if it works for you. That's fine too. I mean, I have had some people go 10 days off of consecutive running, and then starting to ease like every other day, back into running for the first couple weeks, and then kind of ramping things up too. 10 days is essentially the cutoff. After 10 consecutive days off, your fitness levels start to drop precipitously. So I wouldn't go any more than 10 days of consecutive off days. But that's essentially, I would take a slow build up back towards full volume. What about recovery from an 80 to 90% effort? Even that, I would still be now 80 to 90% effort. I mean, it's close to a race effort. That's essentially a long run effort, or close to a hard long run effort. I would still be, because if it was 26 miles and if it was on pavement, then I would still be, liberal with the recovery on the back end. It's important to let the body recover no matter what. 26 miles, something the body's not really used to, unless you're getting up to 24 to 25, 26 miles on a long run, which not many people do. It's important to be generous with the recovery on the back end. But also, keep in mind what you want to run. If this marathon is a building block to another marathon, how long do you have in between this one and the next one? How much time do you have? Is it going to be several weeks after that, or is it going to be a whole nother season, several months? So the timing of these things is important too. So, and when do you want to start racing again? And what kind of season do you want to have for yourself? So like for you, P Plays, or even Dimitri and Kim, like generally, will you train for another marathon after you race a marathon, or do you do other things? Do you train for some shorter things? Give me an idea of what you do, because they complement each other extremely well, particularly the shorter stuff. So I encourage my folks. I don't make them do it, but I encourage them to, get some 5Ks in, some 10Ks, maybe a 10-mile or a half marathon. They complement the marathon really well, and the 10-mile particularly is a good simulation of what you can run for a marathon. So, and then I'll have do a couple of time trials in the next season, so that we could set the training paces accordingly. And that's the other thing too. If you've been training in the appropriate pace ranges all along, then you're in the best position to not only run well in the marathon, but also recover well, because you're not training way beyond your fitness level. So that's the other thing too, training in the right pace ranges. So, but the weeks leading up to 6 weeks afterward, I would have no structured pace. I would just get back into running again and just get the rhythm under you, get your legs back. Also do 5Ks and miles. Good. This is good. And I have, it's funny. I have like athletes that when they train for 5K and 10K, I'll test them at a mile to see where their fitness is. I actually have a video on this channel called the 1 mile time trial, and it helps determine your current fitness. But I generally don't have people do it unless they're running about 6 to 8 weeks of base running first, because then it's a more accurate indicator. And the 1 mile time trial helps set your training paces for everything: easy run, steady recovery, workouts, and all kinds of stuff. And it makes sure that you're in the right spot, the right position to run well in the 5Ks and races like that. And people that are running the marathon, I'll sometimes test them at 5K or even 10 miles to see how their training's progressing. And it gives you an idea on where you need to tweak, or if you're on the right track or whatnot. So testing them along the way, particularly if you don't run any races on the build up to a marathon, is a good idea. You want to make sure that your fitness is progressing towards your goal, and you'll get an idea of how close you are or how far away you are to your goal. So they're important benchmarks, important indicators. So, but do you folks, I mean, like Kim and P Plays and even Dimitri, if you train for a marathon, do you run any races leading up to it? Give me an idea. Do you run 10 miles, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons? And if so, how many races do you run leading up to the marathon? And also, how long do you build up for the marathon? 10 weeks, 12, 16, 20. Give me an idea of how you train for the marathon, so I can give you some more constructive feedback as well. And by the way, guys, if you don't mind hitting the like button, it's really helpful to the channel, especially if you enjoy this stuff. It's really helpful to the channel's growth by getting the increase in the likes. So, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel as well. I mean, the goal is to get this channel monetized, and I'm close. I'm pretty close. So, and I want to continue doing live streams, and I want to change this into kind of a more significant type of live stream too, essentially, where it becomes like a coaching clinic for several hours in a day. We could talk about multiple topics, but I want you guys and gals to have direct access to me anytime you want, so I can answer questions right live on the fly. So it's important to me to have, and I want you to be able to get, not only your questions asked, but you should have access to all the content, no matter how fast you are or how slow you are. You still should have access to all this content. So, so Kim, you would like to do short races in the spring and then a marathon in the fall. That's a good plan. How would you approach a short race period block? Well, let's say it depends on. So let's say you want to run a marathon in October again, right? So does that mean your spring schedule ends in May or something like that, or even April? So I would generally take a 12 to 16 week block of training. So let's say you run the marathon tomorrow, and then the next 6 weeks or so you're recovering and building things back up a little bit, and then come December you're kind of putting together some preliminary training towards training for 5K and some shorter stuff. That's what I would do, and then that way you can really rock in January, February, March, April. And if you give yourself a 12 to 16 week block where you can do blocks of training and run your best races in there, and then recover in May. And then you can start your build up like June, July, August, September, and then you have like a 16-week build up for an October marathon. Then you'll be in good shape. That's kind of generally how I would lay it out. But if I have specific dates, and I obviously analyze it a little bit differently. But that gives you enough time to have a solid season, run some races, spread them out accordingly, and recover. And then because recovering from a season like where you're training for shorter stuff the requirements aren't the same as recovering from a marathon. You can come back a little bit sooner, which gives you more time to run a base training cycle for the marathon, if that makes sense. 4 months specified training before any race. Okay. So essentially, let's say 16 or 18 weeks or whatnot leading up to any race. And so I would encourage you, if you don't run any races within that 4-month period, to test yourself. If it's a marathon, then testing yourself at 10 miles. I generally I have athletes do a 15-mile simulation run about 5 weeks out from a marathon or 4 weeks out. It gives them an idea on how well you're progressing. So let's say you're trying to break 3 hours. So it's like 6:50. You should be able to run 15 miles or even 16 miles at 6:50 pace per mile about 5 weeks out from the marathon. You should be able to do that. You should be able to run at least 10 miles at goal marathon pace in the beginning or cycle, or the beginning of 4 weeks of your cycle. So you don't want to deviate that far from fitness at any point in time. That way it's easy to kind of cycle back in, if that makes sense too. But a 4-month specified training is a good amount of time, P-Plays. And then that's kind of what I would do too if Kim, in terms of the spring, kind of building up towards a fall marathon. Let me know if that makes sense, guys, if it makes sense. And if you have any questions pertaining to that. But it's definitely a good idea. Having a spring season full of shorter races is a great idea, Kim, because it can help you. It can help complement, and you can use some, let that springboard you into more speed development and get the legs under you, so that you can also set a little bit more ambitious goals for the marathon if things go well. So, but the shorter races definitely help you make bigger, significant improvements in the marathon. So, if that makes sense too. But there's a lot of components that, whether it be speed development, fartleks and progression runs along, they're all important components, but the recovery component post-marathon is just as important as these training components leading into a marathon. So I generally recommend, a structured, like a 6-week block where it's, 2 weeks of no running, but infused with a little bit of cross training the second week, and then 4 weeks of just gradual building of running until you're at a decent volume. You don't necessarily have to be at full volume yet. Because it's also good to break things down into 4-week blocks or 6-week blocks for periodization purposes, which helps you adapt to certain things, so you're not doing too much of something too soon. Because then when you do that as well, you could be at your sharpest, 4 to 6 weeks early, and not the day of the marathon. So you want to catch these marathons on the upswing, because like I said, it's not like a 5K. You can't, if you have an off day and your legs just give out on you 20 miles, you can't come back the following week and do it again. 5K, you can have an off day and come back the next week. So you have to be as precise as possible when training for the marathon. More so than a half marathon. Obviously, you have more, margin of error for there, but marathon is as precise as possible. But what you're doing, your thinking process. I like your thinking process, Kim. I like it. P plays as well. Um, and Dimitri, I would definitely, this week I would probably get into maybe 3 days a week of running, alternating, and then the next 4 weeks go 3 days, and then 4 days, and 5 days, and 6 days, and then you're back into a decent rhythm, Dimitri, where you're running somewhat consistently again, and then you can, at that point, you'll have an idea, or it gives you time to figure out what you want to do in the spring and how to set up your training accordingly. I generally like to build out the training, and if there are races, I plug in the races, and then I kind of work backwards, because then it gives you, it makes it easier for you to build blocks of training, so, and set things up accordingly. But in terms of like a marathon full season, if it's a 16-week season, 2 to 3 races max leading up to the marathon. If it's a 12-week season, maybe 1 week and one race and a simulation before the marathon. Some folks might need a second race. But in a 12-week cycle. But that's generally how I blueprint it. But everybody has individualized needs, so I tailor people's training based on their needs. Some people need more, some people need less. It's different for everybody, particularly when it comes to the marathon. And it's important to consider those things as well. Like I said, that's why I wanted to talk about the marathon post recovery, because it helps set up your next block of training, and put you in a good position to feel good going into it, feel a little bit more recovered going into it. And obviously listening to your body in those 6 weeks after the marathon is very important. So those are all significant pieces to marathon training. Recovery is training. So does this make sense, folks? You have any questions on that? And again, setting up your races for the following season is a good idea, because it helps also set up your recovery. It doesn't have to be, obviously, you need to have everything decided, but just a general idea of what you want to do the following season is a good idea. So, and again, keep in mind, if you're running a fall marathon, the majority of your training is going to be in the summer in the hot weather. If you're training for a spring marathon, the majority of your training is going to be in the cold weather. So you're going to be doing some of your more significant workouts or long runs in extreme temperatures, one way or another. Okay, so that's why periodization is important. That you're breaking it into pieces of your body. And then you can dedicate 8 weeks where you work specifically on 5K, 10K, and 8 weeks where you do more specific for the half marathon. Not necessarily. I complement them all together, Kim. But that said, if you're doing, let's say you want to end the season with a half marathon, the last block are going to be, the main workouts will be half marathon based. But I want my folks ready at any point in time, so that if you want to run a half marathon first, and then a 5K, and then a 10K, I generally want my folks as ready as possible to run any type of race at any point in time. So if you have to improvise, you're ready one way or another. So, and I generally don't alienate 5K and 10K work when I move over to half marathon, and I don't ignore half marathon stuff when I'm doing 5K to 10K. That's why the 4-week cycle is good, or the 4-week block is good, because the long runs, complement. So the long runs are going to, make it easier for you to transition upward to a marathon and downward from a marathon, and the tempo runs, threshold training, and all this and speed development are going to complement each other. But in terms of specificity for the race, like the last 4 weeks of specific workouts will be more half marathon based if that's the last race of the season. I generally won't do 8 weeks straight of just this and then 8 weeks straight of just that, because then it makes it I don't want to ignore any type of stuff. So like if you have some short stuff, so let's say the first 4-week block, it's threshold and tempos and hills, right? The next 4-week block is speed development and a little bit more threshold tempo. And then I start to transition with some tempo and speed, or tempo and long repeats or moderate repeats. And then the last cycle, where I'll taper the volume back a little bit and keep it there, and then concentrate the workouts towards the goal race where it is. And I generally don't cut volume every week. I'll cut you there, I'll cut it down, then I'll stay there for a couple of weeks. So, because just as you need to adapt to volume going up, you need to adapt to it coming down as well. So the last thing you want is kind of feeling off rhythm going into a race. And sometimes if you drop volume every week for several weeks, your legs can feel a little bit off. So That's kind of how I lay it out, Kim. I can give you a better idea. Or if you take a look at my training programs for the half marathon, you'll see kind of how I lay things out. And therefore, the blocks are 4 weeks each, and the concentration is similar, but there are tweaks each 4 week block where the focus transitions from this to this a little bit, especially particularly when you start to come into races. But you want to be as ready as possible, obviously at your best in the last 4 weeks, which is why I kind of transition things to 4 week blocks. 8 week blocks can sometimes be a little bit too long, which is why, doing too much too soon. I don't want you too sharp too soon. I want you hitting that marathon or the half marathon while you're still going up, not while you're coming down. That makes sense too. Um, but 8 weeks and 8 weeks is doable, but I like 4 week blocks or 4 to 6 week blocks. They're generally a little bit better. And you also can do repeatable cycles of some sort too. Even in a 6 week block, you could do 2 3 week cycles where you can repeat them. And then the next cycle is different, but you can repeat them. And then the last, you can repeat them if it's an 18-week block. So it's the way it gives you an idea of how you're progressing. And progression too, keep this in mind, it's not only doing the same workout 3 or 4 times and running each time you do the workout it gets faster, it's also doing more volume. So let's say you're doing 8 times an 800, then 3 weeks later you do 10, then 3 weeks later you do 12. It's also doing more volume at a certain pace as well over time. That's a sign of progression too. So there's a couple different signs of progression, and knowing where your strengths are and your weaknesses, it's important to know a little bit about both. So I hope you find that informative and helpful, Kim. A question about ramping back up. Should someone very slowly increase? Yes, it has to be gradual. It has to be gradual, P-Place, or it should be. That's the best way to make sure you're recovering properly and feeling good. Let's say in the first 3 weeks back to running 30, 40 miles per week. So let's say if your goal is to get to 70, right? Post-marathon, generally what I would do, is obviously there's no running in the first 2 weeks, cross training the second week. After that, I would do, let's just say 20 miles, and then the following week 35, and then the following week 50, following week 65, and then you kind of build yourself up to that 70, and then you stay there for a little bit before you ramp up to the higher volume. And generally for me, the higher volume, once you get there, you generally do it for 3 blocks of 3 weeks. You drop down the 4th week a little bit. You come back out 3 weeks, drop it down for 4 weeks, just to give the legs a little bit of a break without deviating from training as well. But remember, a 14-day cycle too. Let's say 70 miles a week is an average of 10 miles per day. You can have a day off every other week, and let's say the day off is every Sunday. You're still, even on the week where you have an off day, you're still averaging 10 miles a day with the 60-mile week with the off day. So that's the other good thing too. So the average per day is the same for an extended period of time. Then you make the adjustment whether to increase volume or increase intensity. Don't do both at the same time. It's one or the other. You're figuring out how you're progressing along the way. You're welcome, Kim. My pleasure. But I would take a gradual, to answer you, to go back to P-Place, I would go back to a gradual increase in volume. Your body needs the time to adapt. And in that gradual increase, workouts, just like after the marathon or something like that, light strides. But I wouldn't be doing any workouts, any hard workouts for the first 6 weeks. A light fart, like maybe in week 5 or 6, but no mile repeats, none of the hard, crazy stuff. Good. You're welcome, Pete. So, but again, you have to listen to your body too. You know your body better than I do, better than any coach does. So, but these are things that I've used on lots of athletes with success who have run anything from 800 meters up to the marathon. So that's something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind. And it has been very, very helpful. And again, I'd rather take the conservative approach and make sure you're recovered on the back end and give you a little bit of extra time than go too fast and then have a setback because you're getting hurt or sick. That's the last thing we want to do. So any other questions? I will wrap it up shortly. And if you have any suggestions on videos that you want me to do, I have a couple coming up. I'm working on some stuff with nutrition and running technique and things like that. But, since there were so many marathons these last 2 months, I wanted to do something like this that hopefully people can benefit from recovering from the marathon so that they can set themselves up nicely for the future, short-term and long-term. So I hope you found it helpful and informative. And again, if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments or reach out to me directly. On my Instagram running page is Top of the Line Running. It's the same name as this channel. And my direct email is blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com. Again, it's blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any training specific questions, if you want me to look at things and so on. Um, you can reach out to me either way, and I'm happy to answer questions. So I don't see any questions, so I'll wrap it up. And again, thank you for so much for attending. I appreciate your time. And have a great week, Kim. Good luck and kick some butt in your marathon. Let me know how you do. I'm excited for you. And have a great weekend, everybody. And I'll see you all next week. Take care.